not celebrate. Usually they have an anniversary, you say celebrate, so I automatically went to that. We're definitely not celebrating.
When.
Yeah. 25 years ago, yesterday, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were murdered. So, and O.J. Simpson was acquitted of it. But looking back at what will be 25 years coming up in 4 days, which will be June 17th, will be that infamous Friday evening.
Boy, I remember that.
Where were you?
I was watching the Knicks and the Rockets.
Yeah.
And I was home watching the game. And I remember just, all of a sudden, because I don't even remember if back then, was there a picture in a picture back then? Maybe there was, but all of a sudden, all of a sudden you just see a picture pop up.
Yeah.
And newsflash, O.J. Simpson, and it just, you couldn't help.
Right.
But go, oh my God. And I don't think for the next, 24 to 48 hours, I never was more riveted by just watching a truck.
Yeah.
Just go, and the truck, and the truck, and the truck, and the truck.
Where were you?
I was at home watching it. I was home for the most part. And then, we all kind of saw what happened after that, and we've all watched all the specials and stuff.
Well, I was only 15 years old, and I remember thinking that it was so hard to reconcile that O.J. Simpson was capable of this. Because for us, living in Cincinnati, away from California,
right?
I had never heard, nor do I believe anybody in my family or friend or anybody around us knew of any kind of history of domestic violence with O.J.
Yeah.
The only thing we knew of him was why the
Hertz Rent-A-Car
on NBC, the Naked Gun
airplane movie,
right? And that he was this fun-loving, charismatic, smiling guy on television. You're just like, and obviously the rage that was behind it. So that's what was stunning about it. Years later, and having looked back and watched all the specials, what I think is, I think it's talked about a little. NBC did an absolutely masterful job in how they covered it. Mm-hmm. And understanding how big of a story it was. You're still going up with Game 4 of the NBA Finals with the Rockets and the Knicks, which turned out to be one of the best NBA series, series ever. And the way that you had Bob Costas and Tom Brokaw, and they were, massaging it, back and forth and trying to figure out that balance of, okay, we've got this is a big story, the NBA Finals in and of itself, but you can't ignore this. This is freaking crazy.
Because it was something that, again, like you said, we never dreamt of, what's he doing? What happened? And what shot my wheels off a little bit was, I'm hearing that he's in the Ford Bronco, right? And Al Cowlings is in there, his friend, and I'm thinking, the former right fielder for the Kansas City Royals, Al Cowlings? I'm like, what the hell is Al Cowlings doing in the truck with OJ?
Oh.
And I'm like, what the hell? I don't understand. He was a heck of a right fielder. He had a good arm. And he's in the truck with OJ.
What percent, Frito, you think of our audience is going to understand that?
None.
That reference.
Well, if they're Elf fans, maybe 3%.
That's right. If they're getting the bacon crispy, they probably know it. Man, that's like...
Wait, did you know it?
Yeah.
Because you're a little bit younger than me.
I'm too young, but I still knew of it. We were playing softball last week, and I referenced Kent Herbeck.
See, that's a good one.
And they were like, everybody goes, a few people laughed, and even myself, I thought, like, why did you just think of Kent Herbeck? Like, how did that squeeze in there? We had a big first baseman.
No.
I'm 15, and my parents are split. I live with my mother in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, but I was back in Anderson over at my dad's house playing with the neighborhood kids that I had grown up with. And I remember, we're outside, I think even though it was June, because we always were seasonal, where in the summer we always played baseball in the cul-de-sac. In the fall and winter, we always played football in the backyard. But for some reason, I feel like we're in the backyard of Steve Braun's house playing football. But anyway, we're getting ready, we're playing, and we're going to, all watch the NBA Finals when this whole thing occurs. And it was, like I said, the most stunning thing because since the murder happened, I didn't believe in any way whatsoever that OJ did it at all. because I was completely ignorant as to who OJ really was.
Well, I'd never heard of who his wife was. I didn't know who Ron Gaul. Nobody knew. I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know any of these people. I'm just hearing about, like you said, you're hearing about what OJ and what they're accusing him of. But boy, as the pieces started to be put together,
right,
and the whole thing about, he left and he flew to Chicago, and I mean, and you're going, okay, something smells.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not, look, 9 times out of 10, I would think when you're not guilty of something, what's the first thing you do? I didn't do that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't do anything. What do you want to do? You want to talk? Here, come. I'll talk to you. Whatever you want. But when you run, and you're, because remember, I always told if you lie, you have to try to remember what you said.
Lie, exactly. Because
if you tell the truth, you never have to remember.
Absolutely.
And he was trying so hard to. Well, I was there. I had a glass of water, but I cut my hand. I mean, really?
It broke him. You're right.
Was it Hertz rent-a-car? Was it really?
That's what I kind of thought of too at first. I was like, is the Bronco a rental?
It could be.
And what's I think amazing too, we all have this tendency now to look at social media and look at it for all its drawbacks and all its negatives. And you couldn't. I said earlier that I didn't find it believable that OJ did it, and I didn't know anything about it because, being far away, who out of California really knew about any of this stuff happening, that there had been arrests and things like that. And now with social media, evil people like that, violent people like that, they're exposed way earlier in the process. So if what happened back then with the marriage between OJ and Nicole Brown, it would be out. People would know about it.
Yeah.
It would be the reporting. There would be things out there where people would know it, and I think that is actually. I look at that as a positive of social media.
But if you think back to when you were younger, and it can be 20 years ago maybe, is if social media like it is today was out there, 25, 30 years ago, and you're like, oh my God, how would history have changed?
Oh, well, we wouldn't look at certain people the way that we do.
Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't. I mean, everything's different now. I mean, look, I know Herm Edwards is famous for saying, don't hit send. Let me tell you something. What you do for a living and what you Facebook or tweet or Instagram or whatever it is, you do have to think about it these days. I mean, because everybody's watching.
No kidding.
Everybody's watching.
And the reporting, not only with social media, but with 24-hour news cycles.
Right.
Let's imagine for a moment that, we look back at history. Like, what if Ronald Reagan, who's one of the most revered presidents of all time, had MSNBC and Fox News and all that? We could look at him, maybe differently than we do. Michael Jordan, there would be reports of him cited. They're so legendary, where he'd be at New Jersey or Atlantic City till 3 a.m. before playoff games.
Gambling.
And then one day he was sitting up against his car out in the in the garage at I don't remember what arena it was, and he's leaning against a car smoking a cigar before the game as other players are walking in. Is there anything more intimidating in the world when you see the greatest player that has ever walked the earth standing there smoking a stinker right in front of you as you're walking in, like, I'm going to own your ass today?
Yeah, it's like, hello, fellas.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
That is the biggest FU I have ever seen or ever heard of like that. But we would, some of these players and people can do no wrong in our eyes, especially in retrospect. But I think if had it been, not that I'm saying that, we'd be better off or life would be better if we all saw these people more exposed than they were. But
but as a society, I think we're so curious anyway. Mm-hmm. And now that we have all of this access, what's the first thing you see if somebody, somebody was telling me about social media. Words create a certain kind of reaction, but a picture or video creates 10 times the reaction.
Absolutely.
And all you have to do is you're searching, you see a video, and you're like, what the hell is that?
Well, yeah.
And you click it, you're going to click it.
one of my favorite quotes ever. It came from Ronald Reagan, where he...
Was it the one he said, well...
That's pretty good. You want to? No.
Well, Nancy,
you can't lie to that thing or something. I mean, that's pretty much what it was that he was talking about, because that's how his popularity, came up, because he was so well spoken and so good in front of the camera. And he said essentially that you can't lie to the camera,
right?
And how it shows. And and when I say going back to, Reagan, hell, you go back to JFK, and LBJ, and if they were under the scrutiny of, 24-hour news, I mean, it would just be crazy in social media. So anyway, it's fascinating to look back, and then can't believe it. It's been 25 years since all that. And if you haven't seen the 30 for 30, that 5-part series, it's one of the best things I've ever seen on television, and it's a great piece of not only theater, but also of journalistic work, and the things that are exposed and uncovered for the very first time to the public that had not been seen before. You will see things, again, I'm probably speaking to like 0.1% of people that haven't seen it, but you have to, because and you will see things in there that you cannot unsee. It's tough, but it's I think everybody should see it.